My name is Ellie Davis, and I'm speaking with Fran Finkel about her interest in the Radnor education system.
I've lived in Radnor since 1964, um, and you can do the math. I've been involved with the league probably definitely since the early 70s. I don't remember the exact date. Uh, while I was working, I was active. Before I was working, I was active. After I retired in 2003 from the high school, I have not been active. The only issue that was important to me was education, particularly special education. And that's how I got involved back in probably 1975, 45 years ago, roughly. The district had very little. They had classes for what were then known as mentally retarded, and that was about it. I didn't think my kid was getting what he needed at Wayne Elementary, so it started there. And I went to visit a lot of private schools and decided they were not the answer because I really believe in the public school system. And so I cannot remember how I even learned about the league. I really can't. Whether I read an article, I don't know because I didn't know anybody involved. Um, and I had been a teacher before my kids were born in Philadelphia. So it was something that was in my MO. Yeah. So um, I'd like to see more parents in Radnor keep their kids in the public school system and make the public school system what they want it to be instead of saying, oh, well, I joined the league and there was a group of women who were basically deceased at this point who had been volunteering in the schools and realized that there were a lot of kids who didn't know how to read. And that was the era where we used the word dyslexic and we used other words that are no longer around. And they were quite upset. They felt the district was not doing anything for those kids. So we, on our committee, had a very receptive superintendent at the time and pushed the issue. I was particularly interested in the plight of what I saw as the gifted kids who I felt also were not getting services they should have gotten. So we did in those days the league did many studies with a lot of information, a lot of fact, because there were a lot of very, very active women. We weren't working and we had time. So that was the initiative. The state passed a law, Public Law 94, one can't remember it now, that finally mandated services to special needs kids, including the gifted. And the district did a good job getting started and continuing. I have no idea what it's been like the last 17, 18 years.
But during her involvement, Ms. Finkel says, the gifted program was a great success.
The world was different in the 80s and 90s, um, and there was money available, and there was an impetus created from parents as well as, but the league really made a difference. Well, at the time, they hired a lot of staff, actually. It ended up that I was actually hired and taught at the high school in the gifted program after the study was finished. The school board was receptive at the time. It wasn't easy, but the women that I was involved with, two come to mind. Roberta knew them, Fran, Lucy, and Mary Meeker were extraordinary. And it was hard not to agree with them when they argued. Fran Lucy eventually was on the school board after all that. I was at the high school several times registering kids in the cafeteria. couple times we spoke in history classes, but um, I don't think that many seniors turn 18 actually. Yeah, and the ones who came by, it wasn't last year because of COVID, it was the year before, were very eager to register. Um, Whether they ever went to vote is another story. I don't know, but it makes life is easier now voting than it used to be. Here, not in Georgia and some other places, but here.
Miss Finkel has observed how the League has evolved to accommodate women who are more commonly working outside the home.
Yeah, those of us who are basically in our 80s had years where the league was a very vital part of our lives. Today's women, for the most part, are working full time. They don't have the time. In the 70s and 80s, when I was involved, there were protocols, I guess I would call them, for each committee. And nothing was done without true research and investigation, reading, interviewing, and then appearing before the school board. Um, I'm not sure that it's done that way anymore. As I said, I pay my dues, but I'm not active. Um, Roberta has tried, but that's in the past. So I'm not sure that the league has as much clout as it did, because it really did, particularly in the 80s and 90s, early 90s. Almost environmentally, with the Board of Commissioners, they went to every elected group that could make a difference. Roberta still does that, I know, but I don't think it's done in the same. Not that she doesn't do it in the same way, but I don't think as a group it's done quite in the same way. Yeah, see, we had daytime, and most of I still go to the annual luncheon to see people that I know, but most people that I knew back then are gone or, like me, in the back seat. And that's not to say a whole new generation can't take it over and infuse it with some new life, which would be good, especially now with voting rights issues. And that's a whole world in of itself.
Miss Finkel also shared some of her visions for the future of the League.
Um, well, one question is whether it should still be called the League of Women Voters. That's a question, not a major one, but a question in today's world. I have grandchildren your age and older and younger, and gender is a big part of life now. So I wonder whether that's a term that should be talked about. I'd like to see the league. I'd like to see people stepping up for when Roberta gets tired, um, and it's a difficult situation to be neither Democrat nor Republican and be in the league. I did have neighbors who quit the league years ago because of Roe v. Wade. And the league cannot take a position on a lot of issues that are really important to a lot of people. So in Radnor, when I first moved in here, for example, the school board was totally Republican, and now it's totally Democrat. Now that's a huge change, huge change. Um, and maybe temporary and maybe not. It's hard to know. But I'd like to see the league continuing to study issues that impact children. I do believe adults should be able to take care of themselves, and kids can't. So, a new study on special ed, maybe, and see how things are going, um, see how it's staffed, see who is organizing it, see whether money is the only thing that matters, which sometimes happens and shouldn't.
And to anyone considering joining the League, Miss Finkel would say that
In a world that's extraordinarily busy, where you could volunteer your life away if you so choose, um, the league I don't think is uppermost in a lot of people's minds when it comes to volunteering. And I think more people should consider it. Um, but only if the league is going to actually continue to appear before legislative groups, because that's where the power is. Power is not in volunteering. Um, I volunteered a lot of years, and you get to the point sometimes where you feel as if you're just spinning. So young people have to be prepared to be aggressive and assertive and persevere.
Ms. Smith also spoke about the type of people involved in the league and the opportunity that the group provides.
The women and some of the men, not too many men, but some men um, in the league tend to be bright, committed, concerned, and eloquent. And so it's nice to be around a group like that. And at the annual luncheon, of course, somebody is honored. The last one I went to was Sue Smith, um, because so many of the people, not so many, some of the people involved in the league also make a huge difference in other areas of the community. And I give them a lot of credit. It's good to have conversations with them. Yeah. And get away from some of the pettiness and some of the first world problems that don't really matter. Yeah, those two women that I mentioned earlier were my mentors. They were extraordinary. And had lived in Wayne a long time. Their kids had gone to Radnor schools. Um, but there were others whose names escape me now. But everybody, the league, because of its interest in climate issues and this and that and the other thing, there's a niche for anybody. If they have the energy, there's an avenue for everybody, which many volunteer organizations are much narrower.
Two people who did great work outside of the league to improve access to voting were the Smiths, as Ms. Finkel talked about. You can listen to the third episode of the League of Women Voters Oral History to hear more from Ms. Smith.
I was involved a long time ago in the late 90s. Sue Smith's husband, John, um, I don't know if Sue talked about this, was very, very interested in voting issues. And he formed an organization, name of which I totally forget, to get college kids involved in voting. And that was 25 years ago. And I was on sabbatical that year and I volunteered for that. And I know there are some organizations that do that now, but they were right before their time. And John and Sue put in a lot of time. And it lasted for a couple years and then it wasn't around anymore because he brought college kids from all over the country to Philadelphia and had study groups and all kinds of things. So um, there are those little efforts that I'm a little hopeful now might make a difference in this decade. We'll see.
And finally, Ms. Finkel talked about the importance of youth civic engagement.
I lived through the 60s and change only comes from young people. And so we need more young people who have the strength to do what they think is right. And that starts at the high school, starts in the middle school too.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever you can do for the younger kids, that would be great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It was really good to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Finkel, for participating in the League of Women Voters Oral History. Next, I'll be speaking with Kathy Wright about her involvement with the Delaware County Health Department. Thank you for listening, and remember to stay civically engaged.